Tom Selleck did not step into admiration untouched or untested. The image that settled into the hearts of audiences shaped through defining portrayals of Thomas. Magnum in Magnum P.I. and Frank Regan in Blue Bloods was carved slowly, deliberately under pressures few ever see. Those roles that anchored him in American television history demanded steadiness across decades, not moments. He became more than a familiar face. He stood as a measure of strength and integrity that refused to erode with time. Across generations, he did not merely portray characters. He carried them with a gravity that lingered after the screen dimmed, imprinting trust, reliability, and a sense of order that audiences returned to again and again. What he gave went far beyond entertainment. It was reassurance, it was constancy. It was the echo of a golden era that never fully leaves once experienced. The scale of what he built is often summarized in numbers, though numbers alone never tell the story. An estimated $45 million accumulated not through spectacle, but through endurance. More than 275 episodes of Blue Bloods stretched across 14 uninterrupted seasons. Syndication that still flows quietly in the background. A secluded Hidden Valley ranch, once valued between $5 and $6 million. 60-plus acres shaped by his own hands. Trees planted one by one. Trenches cut into stubborn earth. Mornings that began before sunrise and nights that ended long after it disappeared. His California properties read less like indulgence and more like chapters of labor, trucks worn by use. Jeeps marked by years of motion, nothing untouched. That land holds strain as deeply as it holds soil. Beams and fence lines carry the memory of nights pushed through pain, scenes completed while his back tightened. Days begun already depleted. Behind the admired figure stood a man absorbing missed moments, a marriage that collapsed, years surrendered to obligation, and a body that recorded every demand placed upon it. Those closest to him never measured success by headlines. They remember the father who stepped away from momentum to sit beside a hospital bed, the husband who rebuilt from fracture, the performer who guarded every frame even when breathing itself became work. If his presence ever carried you through a difficult moment, that steadiness was earned the hard way. The man America would one day trust did not emerge from ease. He came from a childhood where love was present, but nothing was guaranteed. Born January 29, 1945 in Detroit, Michigan, Tom Selleck entered a nation still stitching itself back together after war, when stability had to be earned daily. His father, Robert, worked long hours in real estate not to climb, but to keep a family of 6 upright. His mother, Martha, turned modest rooms into refuge, teaching through action that presence could outweigh abundance. At 7 years old, his family moved west to Sherman Oaks, California, not chasing glamour but possibility. Close enough to see Los Angeles, far enough to resist it. There he absorbed a code reinforced daily: arrive on time, do the work, keep your word. Long before fame arrived, the rules were already set. Sports became his early proving ground. In the early 1960s, basketball offered structure when little else did. Pre-dawn practices, empty gyms, missed shots answered without applause. Coaches recognized discipline. Teammates relied on him. Yet he never mistook attention for destiny. He learned to move forward without being seen. At 17, a sudden car accident fractured that rhythm. Everything narrowed to breath and sky and the uncertainty of whether the future would return intact. The injuries healed, but the interruptions stayed. Competition changed. What mattered was not winning, but returning again and again when retreat would have been easier. That steadiness earned him a 1962 scholarship to the University of Southern California. Not through flash, but consistency. Majoring in business administration, he imagined a dependable life in real estate, perhaps walking his father's path. He did not know another road was already forming beneath him. Looking back, those years reveal a pattern. A young man learning to carry weight long before the world asked him to perform. Discipline sharpened by scarcity. Responsibility absorbed without complaint. Even then, Tom Selleck counted more than points. He counted promises kept. Days endured. Moments when standing firm mattered more than standing out. Before admiration arrived, the foundation was already set. A life trained to receive praise without leaning on it. to withstand hardship without surrender. By his early 20s, life began tightening its grip. In 1965, an unplanned invitation from a drama coach pulled him into a modest theater class while completing his degree at USC. Dimly lit, barely noticed, yet decisive. On that small stage, he discovered discipline without whistles and teamwork without scoreboards. Acting did not feel like escape. It felt like responsibility. He took the smallest work available, anonymous television backgrounds, fleeting commercial moments not to be seen, but to stay close to the craft. There was no glamour here, only repetition and resolve. Then in 1967, at 22, momentum was cut short by a draft notice. He answered without hesitation, joining the California Army National Guard for 6 years. No bargaining, no resentment. When he returned in 1973, doors that had begun to open were closed. Silence louder than rejection. He started again from nothing. Guest appearances vanished between breaths. Pilots promised futures that never aired. Each rejection folded carefully away. Late at night, the question returned quietly. Were these rehearsals for a future that would never arrive? It was not despair that stayed with him. It was endurance. By the late 1970s, patience began to show its first return. Casting directors noticed steadiness. That quality led him to the Rockford Files. Recognition flickered. The current shifted. Yet every moment carried the memory of years unseen. Everything he carried ignited in 1980. At 35, Magnum P.I. arrived and America responded. The icon was not created by costume or charm. It was revealed by reliability. Ratings soared. Millions tuned in weekly. Real money followed at last. Yet the glow hid the grind. 12 to 14-hour days. 6 days a week. Hawaiian sun. Stunts refused. Pain accumulated. Holidays vanished. At the height of that ascent, he was offered Indiana Jones, but he had given his word to Magnum. He stayed. No speeches. Just work. When Magnum ended, applause faded quickly. Doubt returned. Then 3 men and a baby pulled him back from the edge. Battles followed. Jesse Stone demanded emotional truth that lingered long after cameras stopped. Blue Bloods arrived in 2010 when many would have been ushered out. Instead, he anchored 14 seasons with bone-deep fatigue and unwavering presence. When budget cuts threatened the crew, he took a pay cut without announcement. Carry the weight so others don't have to. At 80, Tom Selleck stands in a season earned inch by inch. His fortune reads not as triumph, but as survival stretched across decades. He lives as though abundance is temporary and responsibility permanent. Beyond the spotlight, he built a refuge in Hidden Valley, a ranch shaped by labor, patience, and memory. Age now writes itself into his body, movement slow. Pain lingers, yet dignity remains intact. Family remains the axis. His life argues quietly for what admiration truly costs. If his journey has ever given you something steady to lean on, honor that recognition now. Comment 80 or write Reap Tom Selleck to honor them. The years following sudden recognition rarely settle the way the world imagines. For Tom Selleck, fame did not arrive as release. It arrived as responsibility layered atop everything he already carried. As Magnum P.I. elevated him into weekly ritual for millions, the pressure to remain steady intensified. Each episode demanded not only performance, but consistency. The same reliability that had carried him through obscurity now had to sustain visibility. The public saw ease, charm, sunlight. What remained unseen were the long stretches of repetition. The quiet fear that one misstep could fracture everything resting on his shoulders. Behind the scenes, days unfolded without softness. Sweat-soaked costumes before cameras ever rolled. His back absorbed stunts he refused to hand off. Schedules bent holidays into ordinary workdays. Nights ended in trailers where sleep came with boots still on. He would later describe it without complaint, only honesty. It was the best job he ever had, but it asked more than he understood at the time. Every success carried the awareness that stability could vanish as quickly as it arrived. When Magnum concluded in 1988, applause faded faster than expected. Hollywood hesitated. Whispers returned. Could he be more than one role? Doubt did not stop him. It sharpened him. Three Men and a Baby erupted into box office dominance, briefly silencing the questions. Yet, even success carried a shadow. Nights spent staring at ceilings, wondering whether momentum would hold or whether the industry had already moved on. Each project became a test not of talent, but endurance. Then came work that demanded something harsher than stamina. Jesse Stone opened doors into loneliness, grief, and restraint so raw they lingered long after filming stopped. He carried those stories quietly, without asking them to be noticed. Some roles do not release you. They settle inside, altering how you move through the world. When Blue Bloods arrived in 2010, he was 65, an age many are quietly eased out. Instead, he stepped into the center and held it steady for 14 seasons. Over 275 episodes followed. Each year added weight. Knees protested. Mornings required patience. Still, he showed up. Showing up mattered more when it was hardest. Yet long before the industry tested his endurance, life tested his heart. In the late 1960s, when auditions still outnumbered opportunities, he met Jacqueline Ray. She saw him before the world did. Their 1971 wedding was small, built on belief rather than certainty. In modest rooms filled with second-hand furniture, they shared evenings of whispered plans and mornings shaped by bills and hope. When Tom first held her young son, Kevin, something long guarded softened. Family became tangible. For a time, ambition felt less like pressure and more like purpose. Success altered that balance. Magnum's rise carried him to Hawaii for months at a time. 12-hour days stretched into weeks. Distance replaced presence. Back in California, Jacqueline held a household defined by an empty chair. Phone calls shortened. Holidays passed without him. Love thinned under waiting. Their divorce in 1982 arrived without spectacle, only exhaustion. Two people acknowledging that a life constantly torn apart could no longer hold. The moment that stayed with him was quiet standing in Kevin's doorway, watching sleep rise and fall, knowing it was the final night beneath one roof. Some losses do not bruise the body. They rearrange the heart. Life tested him again without warning. In August 1983, Tom took Kevin to practice driving in a parking structure. An ordinary afternoon turned violent in an instant, a jammed gear shift, a sudden surge. The car vaulted from the third floor. Tom ran blind through concrete stairwells, fear louder than thought. Kevin survived. Bruised, shaken, alive. Tom held him, whispering gratitude broken by tremor. That day carved clarity into him. Achievement would never again outweigh presence. Some moments reveal what no success can replace. Not long after, in London, carrying the stillness of loss, he attended Cats expecting nothing more than distraction. Instead, he noticed Jilly Mac. Her joy was not loud. It was steady. Their conversations unfolded carefully, shaped by shared understanding. Walks through damp evenings became refuge. Tea brewed. Laughter softened guarded edges. When they married in 1987, privacy was not secrecy. It was protection. Together they built a life beyond cameras, settling on a ranch where mornings smelled of earth and horses breathed outside windows. When their daughter Hannah arrived in 1988, priorities rearranged without permission. Fame receded. Holding her quieted the noise of the world. Then life tested that clarity. In 1991, a fever became a desperate fight for breath. Acute pneumonia reduced his universe to hospital corridors and monitors. He sat helpless, holding her hand through nights that never slept. In 1992, at the height of momentum, he stepped away from acting for 3 years. No explanation, only conviction. Time with his child was the one thing no success could replace. Hannah recovered and grew strong. Horses became her calling. Tom was always there, leaning against rails, watching her focus mirror his own long climb. Then in 2018, competing at an elite level, she suffered a catastrophic fall. Time folded back on itself. Recovery was slow, humbling. Through every stage, Tom and Jilly stayed close. Love measured in presence, not convenience. These moments shaped the man audiences trusted. Beyond roles and admiration stood a father who repeatedly chose the same answer to stay. As years passed, Blue Bloods carried him into another era of steadiness. When budget cuts threatened the crew, he accepted a pay cut without hesitation. Carry the weight so others don't have to. When the cameras finally stopped, silence followed, part relief, part loss. Even the strongest chapters end without warning. If the quiet strength he carried has ever steadied you, take a moment now. Comment 80 or write Rep Tom Selleck to honor them. Long before contracts and call sheets defined his days, Tom Selleck had already begun building a refuge beyond Hollywood's reach. In 1988, he purchased a 65-acre ranch in Hidden Valley, California, land once owned by Dean Martin. It was not acquired as a symbol or indulgence. It was chosen as an answer. A place where life could be measured by work completed rather than attention received. He shaped it the only way he knew how, slowly, deliberately, without shortcuts. Trenches dug by hand. Thousands of trees planted one at a time. Fence lines repaired under open sky. Mornings that smelled of hay and damp earth. Evenings that arrived without applause. The ranch became more than a home. It became a counterweight to visibility. Horses breathed outside the windows. Oak trees framed days that unfolded without schedules shouted through megaphones. Birthdays glowed beneath barn lights instead of studio lamps. Here, he could be unseen without being lost. The man recognized everywhere could exist without being watched. For years, the steady income of long-running work sustained the land quietly. Feed, water, repairs, caretakers, taxes, expenses that do not pause for sentiment were met through discipline rather than extravagance. But sanctuaries answer to time just as people do. As Blue Bloods reached its close, the unblinking mouth of upkeep sharpened. The body that once charged through days now asked for patience. In a rare moment of candor, he admitted he did not know if he could hold on to the ranch much longer. To outsiders, it sounded practical. To those who understand, it was grief spoken softly. This land was not an asset. It was memory given form, where Hannah learned balance and trust, where Jilly's laughter once carried across open fields, where a man known everywhere could finally rest. Still, each morning he tended the land as he always had, slowly, without complaint. Because if goodbye must come, he would meet it the same way he met every trial, standing steady, trusting that what was built with love is never truly lost. Now at 80, Tom Selleck occupies a season few reach and fewer sustain. Not granted by luck or speed, but earned inch by inch through restraint and integrity. The number most often attached to his name, an estimated $45 million, has never told the full story. That figure was built not by indulgence, but by decades of endurance. 14 seasons anchoring the moral center of Blue Bloods. 8 defining years of Magnum P.I, royalties arriving quietly through syndication, carefully spaced film work. Decisions that favored longevity over spectacle. Even when rewarded generously, he lived as though abundance were temporary and responsibility permanent. His wealth does not read like triumph. It reads like survival stretched across half a century. Money accumulated not to elevate his life above others, but to protect the one he was determined to keep intact. That purpose finds its truest expression not in accounts or contracts, but in land shaped by labor and time. Age has written itself into his body. Decades of stunts, long shooting days, and physical work left their mark. Persistent back pain, knees that protest in cold mornings. Movements that now require deliberation rather than force. There are moments when he pauses at the porch rail, when the first steps feel heavier than memory suggests. Yet he continues. Saddles lifted more slowly, familiar routines replacing speed. On gentler days, he still rides, letting the horse carry more of the burden along trails once charged through with youth's certainty. There is no drama in his aging, no performance of defiance, only acceptance without surrender. The quiet dignity of a man who honors time without yielding to bitterness. What remains is not the applause earned, but the weight still carried to protect what made earning it worthwhile. Family remains the axis everything else turns around. His marriage to Jilly Mack has lasted more than 3 decades, not because life spared them, but because it did not. What holds them together was forged through fracture, fear, and the memory of what happens when presence is postponed too long. Their daughter Hannah, now a disciplined and accomplished equestrian, became the measure by which every later decision was weighed. Roles turned down, schedules reshaped, moments reclaimed before they could be lost again. These were never symbolic gestures. They were practical acts of defense. He has never spoken publicly about formal estate plans, but those closest to him do not need documentation to understand his intent. His priorities are visible in how he lives. Privacy over exposure. Continuity over expansion. The quiet assurance that whatever he built would serve the people he loves rather than outgrow them. Even his philanthropy follows this internal code: support for veterans, law enforcement, and local causes given steadily, without spectacle or naming rights. In recent years, his presence in public life has narrowed, not faded. A few measured interviews. A dignified closing of Blue Bloods without scramble or anxiety. No urgency to replace it. What defines this chapter is stewardship of health that demands patience, of memory that grows heavier, of land that now requires more care than muscle, of relationships shaped by the understanding that time is no longer elastic. Some lives are measured by what they acquire. Others are defined by what they refuse to trade away once the world begins to applaud. Tom Selleck's life belongs firmly to the latter. If his journey has ever given you something solid to lean on, a role that steadied you, a presence that felt reliable, a model of quiet strength that did not ask for attention, honor that recognition now. Because the lives we hold highest are rarely remembered for what they owned, but for what they protected and for the weight they chose to carry so the people they loved did not have to. Comment 80 or write Rep Tom Selleck to honor them. There is a quiet reckoning that arrives when the noise finally recedes. For Tom Selleck, that reckoning did not come as regret, but as inventory, not of achievements but of moments. The ones he stayed for, the ones he almost missed, the ones that reshaped what mattered when everything else tried to compete for attention. By the time the public began speaking of legacy, he had already been living with its weight for decades. Hollywood has a way of flattening people into symbols. The hero, the authority, the steady presence who never wavers. Yet the truth of Tom's life lives in contrast to that simplicity. His strength was never loud. It was practiced, built through repetition and restraint, through choosing obligation when escape would have been easier, through learning again and again that endurance is rarely rewarded immediately and often not at all. As the years advanced, interviews became fewer and more deliberate. When he did speak, there was no urgency to frame his past as triumph. He spoke instead about work, about responsibility, about how much effort it takes to remain present when distraction is rewarded everywhere else. He never mythologized the industry. He described it plainly, an environment that forgets quickly, that rewards momentum but rarely waits for recovery. His survival within it was not accidental. It was earned through decisions made when no one was watching. The closing of Blue Bloods marked more than the end of a series. It marked the release of a structure that had organized his life for 14 years. Call times, scripts, a crew that became family. The rhythm of showing up even when the body resisted. When that structure disappeared, the silence that followed carried both relief and disorientation. A reminder that even the most enduring chapters do not announce their final page. They simply end. In that open space, Tom returned more fully to the land. To mornings that begin without urgency. To tasks measured by daylight instead of schedules. The ranch did not ask him who he had been. It only responded to what he did each day. Repairs completed slowly. Animals tended with familiarity. Paths walked not to arrive anywhere but to remain grounded. This was not retreat. It was continuation. A different form of work, shaped by the same values that guided everything else. There were days when the body resisted even that, when pain narrowed his range, when the weight of years made itself known in small, unavoidable ways. He adjusted without complaint, accepted help where once he relied solely on himself, not as surrender but as adaptation. The same instinct that once allowed him to rebuild careers now allowed him to reshape expectations. What endured most clearly was his commitment to family. His marriage to Jilly Mack remained anchored not by ease, but by shared memory, by knowing what it costs when presence is postponed, by understanding that love survives not through grand gestures, but through staying when staying is inconvenient. Their bond was reinforced through challenges never fully detailed publicly. Private trials carried quietly, without narrative or explanation. The kind of challenges that strip life down to essentials. Hannah's life continued to evolve, her career shaped by discipline and courage. Tom watched not as an architect, but as a witness, available, supportive, present. The lessons he passed on were rarely spoken. They were modeled. How to commit fully, how to recover without resentment, how to return after setbacks without needing applause to justify the effort. Public admiration continued to arrive in small, steady waves. Tributes, retrospectives, lists that tried to summarize decades into minutes. He accepted them with grace, but never confusion. He understood what admiration could and could not offer. It could recognize effort. It could not replace time. It could not undo loss. It could not sit beside a hospital bed or hold a hand through uncertainty. Those were responsibilities that could not be delegated. As he moved further into his 8th decade, his life did not narrow. It clarified. Fewer distractions. Fewer obligations driven by expectation rather than purpose. The weight he carried now was chosen carefully. Health managed deliberately. Relationships protected fiercely. Memory honored without being lived inside. He did not chase relevance. He trusted that what mattered had already been built. There is a temptation to frame such a life as exceptional because of fame. But the truth of Tom Selleck's endurance lies elsewhere. In the ordinary courage of choosing consistency over spectacle. Of staying accountable when walking away would have been easier. Of understanding that strength is not proven by how much one can carry, but by knowing what must be carried no matter the cost. If his life has ever offered you a sense of steadiness in a world that rarely slows down, take a moment now. Because the quiet examples endure longer than the loud ones. Comment 80 or write Rep Tom Selleck to honor them. In the final accounting of a life lived in full view and private resolve, what remains is rarely the image most often repeated. For Tom Selleck, the lasting imprint is not a mustache, a badge, or a familiar silhouette framed by television light. It is the pattern of choices made when applause could not guide him. The decisions that favored steadiness over speed, presence over pursuit, and integrity over expansion. These are not moments that trend. They are moments that hold. Time has a way of clarifying what mattered. The urgency that once shaped every schedule has softened into discernment. Days now unfold with intention rather than demand. He wakes without call sheets waiting to dictate his movement. The rhythm is quieter, but not empty. There is still work to be done, still care required, still responsibility waiting, even if the world no longer insists on watching. The ranch remains a mirror of that life. Every fence repaired, every path worn smooth by repetition carries evidence of a man who never expected permanence without effort. The land reflects back the years he invested, the patience he practiced, the acceptance he learned. If the day comes when he must let it go, it will not be a loss measured in acreage or value. It will be a closing of a chapter written slowly, deliberately, and honestly. What distinguishes endurance from mere longevity is intention. Tom Selleck did not simply last. He adapted. When strength waned, he replaced force with familiarity. When visibility narrowed, he replaced attention with focus. When the body resisted, he listened rather than pushed. These are not concessions. They are the marks of wisdom earned through decades of carrying weight without spectacle. His public absence in recent years has not been disappearance. It has been alignment, a refusal to fill space simply to be seen. When he appears now, it is measured, unhurried, grounded in clarity. There is no scramble to redefine himself, no urgency to prove relevance. He understands that relevance is not maintained through noise but through consistency of values. Family continues to anchor everything else. The bond with Jilly Mac remains built on the understanding that love is not preserved through comfort, but through shared endurance. They have lived long enough to know that harmony is not the absence of strain, but the willingness to face it together without retreat. Their partnership carries the quiet confidence of two people who have already survived what might have broken them. Hannah's life stands as its own testament, not to inheritance but to example. The discipline she carries, the courage she demonstrates, the resilience she continues to refine all reflect lessons learned through observation rather than instruction. Tom's presence in her life has never been about direction. It has been about availability, about standing close enough to support without overshadowing. That balance, once learned the hard way, became one of his greatest strengths. In a culture quick to measure worth by accumulation, his life offers a different metric. What he refused to trade away, what he chose to protect even when it cost him momentum. The roles declined, the time reclaimed, the visibility willingly surrendered. These choices rarely headline, yet they shape lives far more deeply than recognition ever could. There is no dramatic closing to such a story, no final performance designed to summarize decades. Instead, there is continuity, a man still tending what he built, still protecting what matters, still moving forward with deliberation rather than haste. Aging not as retreat, but as refinement. If the steadiness he embodied has ever offered you reassurance, if his presence on screen, or the example of his life reminded you that integrity can endure even under pressure, then take a moment now, because honoring such lives is not about nostalgia. It is about recognizing the value of quiet strength in a world that rarely slows enough to notice it. Comment 80 or write Rep Tom Selleck to honor them. There comes a point when a life no longer needs forward motion to justify itself, when becoming gives way to being. For Tom Selleck, that moment did not arrive suddenly. It unfolded gradually, shaped by decades of learning when to advance and when to hold. What remains now is not an echo of past roles, but a presence grounded in acceptance. Not resignation, but understanding. He does not stand apart from time. He stands within it, aware of its limits, respectful of its authority, and unafraid of what it asks him to release. The public often searches for a final statement, a concluding act that neatly frames a life. But some lives resist punctuation. They continue quietly, without announcement. Tom's does not close with spectacle. It settles into rhythm. Mornings shaped by light instead of obligation. Afternoons marked by care rather than urgency. Evenings that arrive without the weight of expectation. This is not absence. It is fulfillment stripped of noise. What defined him most clearly was never ambition alone, but restraint. The ability to stop when stopping mattered. To step back when stepping forward would have cost something irreplaceable. Many build careers. Few protect lives while doing so. Fewer still recognize when the preservation of what they love must take precedence over what the world is willing to reward. That recognition did not come easily to him. It was earned through loss, fear, and the near knowledge of regret. Once learned, it never left him. There are men remembered for what they achieved, others for what they endured. Tom Selleck belongs to a quieter category. He is remembered for what he carried without complaint, for the steadiness he offered when others leaned, for the reliability that made his presence feel safe, both on screen and beyond it. That safety was not performative. It was built from lived experience, from having faced instability and choosing consistency anyway. Even now, the marks of that life remain visible, not only in the familiar lines of his face or the careful pace of his movement, but in the way he engages with the world, with patience, with attention, with the understanding that nothing worthwhile is sustained without care. He does not hurry through conversations. He does not waste words. He does not treat time as endless. These are the habits of someone who has learned its value the hard way. The ranch, the family, the memories, these are not symbols of retreat. They are evidence of continuity. Proof that a life can expand publicly and still remain rooted privately. That one can be known widely without losing oneself entirely. That success does not require surrendering what makes it meaningful. Music. If there is a lesson in his journey, it is not one he ever set out to teach. It emerges naturally, through accumulation rather than declaration. That strength does not announce itself. That integrity is practiced long before it is recognized. That endurance is not about resisting change, but about adapting without losing direction. And that the most important roles are often the ones performed far from any audience. As years continue to pass, his name will remain tied to characters that defined eras. But those who look closer will recognize something deeper. A man who learned to carry responsibility without letting it harden him. Who allowed experience to refine rather than embitter. Who understood that the truest measure of a life is not how loudly it is remembered, but how faithfully it was lived. If Tom Selleck's life in any chapter has given you something solid to hold on to, then let that recognition live beyond a moment, because quiet examples endure. And the weight carried with care leaves a longer shadow than applause ever could. Comment 80 or write Rep Tom Selleck to honor them.